Hello, my name is Suzanne Sanders, and today I'm so pleased to have Lisa here, whom I also met in that Chiron course that I refer to with Anki. And Anki, I interviewed yesterday, so if you haven't checked out that interview, please check it out. I met so many great people in that group, and Lisa was one of them, and she also kindly agreed to interview as part of the series that I put together about our journey through midlife. If you happened upon this video and haven't checked out my introduction to this series, I'd encourage you to do so. It helps really level set sort of the expectations of what I'm walking through today. You can find it in the main midlife playlist on my YouTube channel. As a quick reminder, I'm going to be talking with Lisa about her soul's journey, what she thinks her soul's themes are in this lifetime, and how this shows up in her natal chart. We'll also be reviewing the major midlife astrological transits that happen in your mid 30s to mid 40s and talk about how these transits helped push Lisa into more fully embodying her authentic self and the path her soul was meant to take in this lifetime. Now, Lisa has just a slightly less astrological knowledge than Anki. Anki was a little well versed in astrology, so I'm going to be walking her through what I see in her chart, and she's really just going to respond with some of the events that were going on in her life. So Lisa, before we dive into your natal chart and your major soul themes, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you here today.
Well, so I am Lisa Goldsmith, and I have been in one career for more than 40 years of my life. And throughout the last 20 years of it, I have really been looking for what's next. Like, I love my work, but it is something I know at some point will come to an end. So I started this journey about the time of my Uranus return, right? Without even knowing that it happened. And I've been going through all kinds of personal work intensives, what is it called? Like hypnosis, regressive
Oh,
hypnosis,
wow.
and all kind. I mean, shamanic rites and endowment. I mean, just on. And so most recently, it was astrology caught me, and the Chiron course. I think it was actually the vision board first with Astro Butterfly, but then the Chiron course intrigued me, and that's just blossomed into so much, informing really my soul's journey. Like,
Awesome.
yeah.
Great. I'm really excited about this conversation because I know that the things that you've learned as you've been going through these different spiritual modalities are going to inform the conversation that we're talking about today, what you've learned from others about your soul's journey. So that's exciting. Okay, so I am going to, let's see, going to go, oops, I need to go back to your natal chart. Sorry about that. Um, so I really wanted to talk about your natal chart first. Oh, I've got to share the screen. Sorry about
Mm.
that. Okay. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to get my little spotlight because I think it'll be helpful for people to follow along. So first of all, I'm just going to walk through some of the themes that I see in your chart, and you can either say yay or nay when I'm done. And what really fascinated me about your chart was there's a lot going on. There's a lot of energies here, a lot of conversations between planets. And like I said with Anki, I'm not going to go into all of the aspects of your chart. I'm really going to focus on the slower moving planets, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, because those are the transits that we're going to be talking about in this midlife transition. These are what you call the slower moving planets. And basically that means they're further away from the Earth, and they move much slower around the orbit is much slower around the sun. And what that also means is that they are in position for much longer, and so they impact a generation of people. And the way that they individuate within a chart is that they sit in a specific house or a specific area of your life, individually in a chart. So they impact you in a different way, and they also impact you by the ways that they aspect different planets in your chart, specifically personal planets. And that's how they individuate. But I just wanted to point out that Pluto, at the time of your birth, was in Leo. And what that means for a generation of your cohort, which is basically people who were born between 1937 and 1958. You said you were born on the latter side of that generation, right?
Yes.
So they are, as a cohort, your generation is learning the evolutionary lesson of creative self-actualization and fulfilling a special destiny that you are drawn to fulfill. But yours is specifically in the 10th house. You are learning to establish your individuality and authority in culture or society. So in that place where you're seen in your career, in that's very important to you. It is also conjunct your Jupiter, which means very close to Jupiter. And Jupiter is in Virgo in the 11th house of community. So Jupiter, what it does is it adds a lot of power of expansion to a planet. And so for you, you know, you're it seems like in your chart, it appears that you're really drawn to community and serving your community. Now, the issue that I'm seeing here is that all of these slower moving planets are retrograde. And so that means it takes you a little bit longer to really live into these energies. Some people say that retrograde planets push the energy to the opposite side of the chart. So it's very interesting because you have all of these planets in the lower hemisphere, and that makes you a little bit more internal, but you're up here really wanting to live externally in the world. So you have a lot of drive and ambition to individuate. Your Uranus is right on your Neptune, and it's also retrograde. So really, basically what this means is that you seek freedom in your individuality and your individual expression, but you also feel like you're kind of on the outside. You have some struggles here. I'll go into that in a minute. But let's finish with Neptune. Your Pluto, sorry. Your Pluto is quincunx your moon, meaning you have a lot of quincunxes in your chart. And quincunxes to me are kind of an uncomfortable energy. I see a lot of quincunxes when you're just learning something new and you haven't quite grasped that. It's like you're balancing on a beam and you haven't quite got your balance, and so you're just learning. You're still learning, so you're not as comfortable with the energy. So here Pluto is quincunx your moon. This is your moon, is your emotional expression. So sometimes you get a little bit obsessed with certain things. It might be your work environment, obsessed with maybe perfection. And so sometimes you get really involved in that. It's also quincunx your Venus. And so you find personal relationships stressful. This is a theme in your chart a lot because it's also opposite your Uranus. You're torn between you have this push and pull between wanting to be loved, wanting to be embraced for who you are, wanting people to accept you, your emotions, your relationships, and your need to be an individual that has the right to express their individuality. So that's been a lot of growth, I'm sure, for you. It's also, your Venus is also your chart ruler, which is Libra is your ascendant. Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is very important for you. And you can see that in this push and pull. And it's also conjunct Chiron, which is your wound. So you have some wounds around your relationship, your ability to express yourself. I'm going to go on here for a little bit because you have so much in your chart that's so interesting. But I wanted to say that also Capricorn is kind of a conservative sign. So your expression of your relationships and how you are in relationships can be, I think, impacted by Capricorn. It's more conservative. You want to be what other people expect you to be. And so there's a hard kind of energy here between being who you are, wanting to express yourself, but also wanting to be accepted. And Capricorn's very conservative. Um, so also, there's so much here. Um, your your Uranus is also opposite Chiron. So you have the strong urge to express freedom, may be a result of your inability to face some of your deeper wounds in with your Chiron, your childhood wounds. Your Chiron is in the fourth house in Aquarius. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and what you think. Neptune is conjunct also your ascendant, which also is the theme of you feeling like people don't quite understand you. You have a sensitivity, a sensitive nature. Your moon is in Pisces, really not feeling like people really understand your individuality, your need to express yourself. There might be with Neptune conjuncting your ascendant, you might just have not understanding yourself as much, having to grow into your identity. Your moon is King Kunk's Neptune. So it's feeling like you need to learn how to say no. You're trying to adapt to your environment, trying to be loved, trying to fit in. And then Venus is square your Neptune, which again is you have some issues around relationships. Lastly, probably should have taken a break here. Lastly, Saturn is square your Pluto. So Saturn here is in your second house, and Saturn here is part of a trine in your chart, which really has helped your career blossom. It's part of your Saturn goes to Uranus and it goes to your moon. It's helped you in your career house, but it's square Pluto. So you have difficulties you have difficulties accepting your own limitations, and that sometimes is limitations of other people as well. And once you learn to accept your own limitations, because you're also really concerned about your stability and security, once you learn how to accept that, you're really going to grow into your north node, which is where you're going toward, and trusting even with your limitations, you're able to rely on yourself. You're going to express your own individuality and still be stable and secure. So that was a lot to throw at you, and I'm going to let you talk and let me know what you see in this chart and how you've grown into it.
Well, I would say I made myself some notes because that was a lot, but there were things that resonated that I think are worthy of highlighting. So Pluto is in Leo in my 10th house, and it is my father is a Leo, and the Uranus Venus opposition is, I think, something around my father as well. So he's been a very strong influence in my individuation and my drive. And there's some tension between my father and my mother. Like my mother, I always wanted her to accept me, and I don't think she ever did. She wanted to, but her own wound prevented that. And the obsession part that you're talking about, I'm a recovering workaholic. I have been an obsessive around work, and it is like to be the very best, accomplish, to be at the top of all the charts, and that's part of like then I can prove myself to myself. I think you mentioned that as well. Personal relationship stress, I totally relate to the tension there and the feeling that people don't understand me. It's like, and I always made it their fault. But I think I'm very close to, at least through the Chiron course and the work that we've done, I've been able to recognize my wound and the ancestral aspect of my wound. And it is around relationships, and especially with myself. And I believe fully that once I do that, that I will have fulfilled my parents', and plans for me, if you will, my ancestors' plans for me, which will um, heal them back, back in generations. Um, and I would say that the last thing is I probably have for a very long time not really understood myself. And that also is part of the Chiron healing process, that I have a much deeper appreciation for it, understanding and love of myself.
That's awesome. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask some follow-up questions, and feel free to pass them back to me if you don't want to answer. But tell me a little bit more about your dad. What was it about your dad that you said really shows up in the Pluto in Leo, and your opposition between your individuality and your relationship? What was it about him specifically?
Well, I was the firstborn, and in those days, you should have been a son. He never made me feel that way. I was the apple of his eye. He loved me and still does. He's still living, and I'm very fortunate to have a strong relationship with him still. And so there was the apple of his eye thing. There was, a midlife crisis, not a midlife crisis, because, in my 20s, there was a serious crisis and then a recovery over time. And trying to live up to his expectations, but knowing that he accepted me unconditionally. So there was a lot of, I'm a very fortunate person. I have incredible parents.
Oh.
So
So
all good.
Leo, I can imagine Leo being a Leo. My mom was a Leo too, by the way. They're very talented people,
Mhm.
and they have a presence that I can imagine me being myself. I really looked up to my mom too. She had a lot of talents, and for some reason there was this feeling of not quite living up to what they have brought into the world. And I can imagine being a man that has your dad rather than your mom has a deeper influence, because you can't really be the opposite sex, especially in the world, because you at the time, I guess it probably was hard for you to achieve what you've achieved in your career as a woman. It was different, I would
Definitely.
imagine, than being a man who was able to kind of move up a lot quicker. So can you speak to that a little bit more about your career and being a woman?
Well, it's interesting to reflect on it as I listen to you say it. And so from early childhood, my father was military. We moved all the time. He was deployed for months, 6, 8 months at a time. So there was that kind of fear of abandonment, like he wasn't there. And then when he was home, he brought gifts, but how did he see me? How did I show up for him? And then, like I said, in my early 20s, there was a complete break. Um, and I shouldn't say complete, but it was really a bad, devastating experience. And from there, I was rebelling, and then I became myself. I individuated outside of his influence.
Hmm.
Does that answer?
Yeah, yeah. And then your mom, you said she never quite accepted you, and you said that it was probably her own wounds. Would you mind talking a little bit about that, or is that too personal?
No, it's not. Mom, she had her own sort of insecurities, I guess I would say, and she um, she was always afraid of what other people would think of us, and that influenced how she guided me with my behavior. So that she was an officer's wife, and that's a pretty public position too. That we could change Dad's career by that whole how to be in the world.
Yeah.
And she comes from a long line of that. And So where was I going with that? And in the end, you know, expressing my gratitude to her for the life that she gave me, the example. She was very accomplished, had 2 master's degrees, was a psychologist, raised 4 children that are all amazing, and telling her, and my mother and father are they had a perfect union. If of course that's my perspective, but 60 plus years of marriage, and trying to tell her how much I appreciate it, she couldn't accept it. It was like, nah, I don't think I was that great.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into how this might have shown up in your Pluto square around age 40. Again, I'm going to be, the arrows here are where I can see conjunctions in your chart. And then I'll talk about other aspects. So Pluto square again is a time when you're forced to confront what needs to transform in your life so you can step into your true power. It's an opportunity to leave behind old patterns that aren't working for you anymore. And I noticed here in your chart that your north node, or the transiting north node, was sitting on your ascendant, and it's near your Neptune, not quite conjunct. And the south node is on your descendant, which really is about coming. The descendant is about the other. So what I was really noticing about this is, right now you're exploring aspects of yourself that's been hidden previously, and dramatic transformation is underway. It's also, your Pluto right now is conjuncting Saturn, and that's also where the whole of your life that you've your whole your whole structure on which you have based your life changes, receiving the rewards you deserve or the confrontations with past karma. The transformation is inevitable, either paying or receiving a heavy debt from the past. And then right here, you see that Uranus is approaching your Uranus return, but it's conjunct your Venus. So you're looking for more freedom and excitement in intimate relationships. You can talk about this. This might be true or not. And in social relationships. These transits often produce great instability in relationships, especially loved ones, which can generate breakups and separations. Your north node is also conjuncting your Venus. The transiting north node is conjuncting your natal Venus, which is also you may be resisting deeper lessons on love, compassion, and forgiveness at this time. You might be holding on to insecurities in your relationships. Relationships might be becoming rocky. So I'd wonder if you want to talk about any of this time period and how that resonates with you.
So, yes, this was a very, very difficult time in my life. And my husband got very sick. He had did we lose each other?
No, we're here. I
Okay.
stopped sharing, which I should have done last time because I really just wanted to talk to you rather than your chart. So yes, I'm here. Did we? Hello? Oh. Are you there?
Yeah. I lost you for a second there. I'm sorry. I hope it didn't.
Okay. I stopped sharing the chart, and then it seemed to have lost you. So now then I started to share again, but I'm not sharing. Okay. So go ahead. I'm sorry. We were talking about your Pluto square, and you said it was a difficult time for you.
Okay. So incredibly difficult time. I lived a privileged and protected life until this point. And then I came to a reckoning with my husband got very sick. It was a terminal illness, and it was a period of decline, around his health, around our marriage, it was like, I think in the end, I talk about it like I was in purgatory. He was in purgatory and I was living with him in purgatory. I mean, we talked about divorce, and he really lost it. And I would say there was an incident that you pointed to a minute ago, around my first love came back into my life, not directly, but he was on the front page of a newspaper, and my mother showed it to me and said, he's a multi-billionaire.
Oh.
And my mother showed it to me and said, see what you could have had.
Oh,
And
mothers.
that was just like, ugh. And it triggered a whole series of this. I'm realizing now maybe that it was part of my decline with him. But I learned an incredible amount from this. And when he passed, it took about 4 years. I blew off the doors for my realization, my individuation, my becoming um, who I'm meant to be in the world, and it started a whole new journey.
Yeah, you can see that in your stages during this time. You're struggling. It looks like you were struggling with, how you show up in your relationships, what you're expecting in your relationships, how you're living your life, and how you're individuating yourself. So, can you tell me a little bit about up until this time with your husband? Like, did you meet when you were younger? Like, how did that relationship blossom at the first part of your life?
Yeah, so I would say probably in today's world, we got married when I was 22, 23, 23. And so that was young. I mean, when I look back at that age, I think, my God, what was I doing? And it was one of those love at first sight kind of experiences.
Mm.
And it was very powerful physically and very challenging because we come from different backgrounds. So we were together for 25 years and married for 23 years and had two incredible children. And yeah, so
Can
is
you
that kind of,
tell me a little bit about where you met and what are you talking about with individual, like what backgrounds, like how were they different? Like where'd you meet and how were they different?
okay, so I was a waitress and he was a paramedic and he came into the restaurant where I waitressed. And so it was you know, we went out and started dating and fell in love and it all evolved. And what was the other part of that question?
Oh, I was just what was the background difference? Why was
Oh,
your background different?
well, I came from a very stable, protected, privileged background, and he came from a mother who I don't know how many marriages she had, and his father died when he was 12,
Oh wow.
and that's a whole nother like amazing journey. And so unstable background,
Okay.
and not privileged. His mother had to rely on the Mormon church to support the family. When she lost her husband, she was like, I don't know, in her 20s and had 4 children.
Hmm.
Crazy stuff.
Wow. So I'm wondering, he had he was in the service too, right? You had mentioned, I remember from he was in the
Yeah.
service. So was there something that attracted you to him that was either different or the same of your father's relationship? Do
Yeah,
you think
that's a
of
good
it that
question.
way?
Yeah, and I don't think so,
Okay.
but I could be wrong. I mean, they were very different people to the point that they really struggled being in the same room together.
Oh, interesting. It's in
Mhm.
I call that out because of your Uranus and how that is opposite your Venus and how you have such a strong desire to express your individuality. Your Mars is also in the first house. So the first house is really about your individual self. So it's a very strong drive for you to express yourself in the way that might be different and than the people that were in your home basically, or the people that you grew up with. So your marriage might be an extension of that, right? Of that of that probably soft rebellion at the time, because you maybe wanted to live into that energy but weren't, like you said, you weren't quite there yet. So that might have been like kind of a soft rebellion, like the beginning of a rebellion that might have been unconscious to you, right?
I think probably, and in some ways you're right. I mean, remembering that I was having this sort of identity crisis, which I had when I was in college, and this break with my father, and so yeah, and reflecting on what it was like to then take up a relationship that intimate with somebody who, in a lot of ways we couldn't relate to each other because of our difference in backgrounds.
Oh, interesting. So that really helped you grow in a lot of ways. Okay. And
Definitely.
so you had a break from your father. You said that incident was kind of like an identity crisis, and you broke, like, did you not speak to your father for a while?
No, we spoke, but it was much less around being engaged. I mean, no, we didn't. We had a breakdown. We never forgave each other for it.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go on. I'm going to share the screen again. Still getting used to these presentations, so forgive me. Okay.
You're doing
So
great.
we're going to go on to your won't go. Just a second. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, your Uranus opposition, which is happened not it was a year later. So everything happened pretty closely together. This is a time that you're desiring freedom, things are shaking up in your life, significant changes happening, you're searching for your unique or cosmic self. So this is probably a continuation of what you're just talking about, but I'll go through sort of what I see in your chart and maybe you can add some color to this. Right now, this is all more Uranus focused, but your Chiron is conjuncting right now your ascendant. So it can be an intense time. This is probably just more intensity from what you were talking about with your husband. It's, you're really an intense time. You may feel compelled to act on your unique and quirky side, showing your strengths and creative side that stems from your past wounds. And also, Neptune is conjunct your Venus, which is you are yearning for some romance in your relationship. You're having some changes in your relationship. You might not be sure about what's going on. Uranus is squaring your natal Neptune. So you're kind of confused. You're probably more in this transition where you're confused with what's going on in your life. Uranus is conjunct your Chiron, and that again is a lot of pain that's happening, especially if you're resisting. If you have a lot of fear, which causes you to hesitate and remain in stuck patterns, that could mean that you're unclear with what's going on. It's very intense. You're maybe clinging to your security and stability and maybe resisting some of the changes that are happening. I can imagine if what you're saying, your husband, you said you were on the way, or he got sick, I think, during this time, could be very painful and not understanding what's going on, but that's helping you kind of face maybe some of your past wounds and learn a lot, like you said. Um, right here, this is a worldwide transit. I just wanted to point this out. Neptune Uranus conjunction, where everybody was going through this intense time. There was a lot of bombings that were happening during this time. People were resisting this Capricorn hierarchical structure, being bound by this capitalism. They were resisting, had a lot of ideology around that. And I'm wondering how it affected you personally, maybe resisting some of the ways that you were, you were trapped in the conservative nature, or maybe feeling trapped in your relationship at that time because you felt tied to what was happening and really wanting to branch out into a different direction, or maybe not be tied down to the reality of what was happening. I wonder if you can speak a little bit about that.
Well, it it really has a physiological effect on me to think about it.
Okay.
It is not what I don't see the possibility that it is related to romance or breaking out. I do see that there was, like, one of the aspects of the breakdown that my husband and I had was he was convinced I had an affair, and he wanted, like, that's why he wanted to get divorced. And it was like, no, you're crazy, I didn't. you know and so that began a dialogue that probably was my first sort of regressive look at my life, going back to the very beginning and walking through all of the possibilities of what could have led up to where we were, and then where would that, like, I did that as a result of what was going on.
Okay.
But I
That's
don't know if I'm answering, but
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when as I'm learning about chart analysis and learning about these trends, this is why I'm doing this series, specifically to learn from people's real lives and their stories, because people say that you can't like look at a chart and really tell what's going on with somebody. It needs to be a conversation, and you have that conversation with that person in front of you, and then you're like, oh, that's how the energy is expressing it's in that light in your life. And so that makes a lot of sense to me with Neptune, with that interpretation. Now that you're saying it, I hadn't even thought of it that way, but that interpretation of that um delusion around your loved ones thinking something of you, and it's an extension really of your feeling like people don't understand you and
Hmm.
don't understand your heart and who you are and your sensitivity. Because if you really weren't doing these things that people, you were really trying to express your individuality, maybe he saw that your need to express yourself in the world, he was fearful of that maybe, and thought that you were expressing that in a romantic way when really you were maybe trying to be more of yourself, maybe. But it's interesting to see that, now that you're explaining that, the difference of that interpretation, I guess, that nuance.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating to me, and I've looked at it in so many different ways, and I've examined what I learned and what there may be more to learn. But yeah, I a lot of things occur to me as I hear you say that. I'm not even sure which one to say. But but I I I think I've said what I need to say.
Okay, great. So I will go on. There's more layers to this, and they just happen right in in succession, which is your Neptune square, which happens a year later. Your Chiron is still right here on your. I'm going to annotate here really quick. It's hard to.
Suzanne, can
Yeah.
I insert something from what I've seen in each of these three slides
Yes.
that I have coupled based on my Chiron learning, my North Node, South Node, and my Chiron. And that keeps showing up here too. And I totally think that it was the beginning of my healing on many levels
Okay.
this whole time period.
Yeah. For your wound, your childhood wound, your Chiron wound.
And my yes, and my North Node, at least my understanding of North Node and South Node, like the aspect of my life and the ancestral lineage, the all of it.
Okay. Yeah. From this, that makes sense to me, because how I interpret this time is moving toward your Chiron return, and these transits help you face some of your past wounding so that you can get to a more authentic place, so you can do some of that deep
Yeah,
healing. And that happens throughout your
yeah,
lifetime, but this is the first real intensive to that. The North Node, South Node, I have definitely heard about it from a generational perspective. You coming into your this lifetime with generational themes, your South Node, things that you're comfortable with because you've had it generationally been taught to you, or even from past lives, it depends, and
mhm,
growing into something new, something comfortable, which for you and I are the same or are similar. Meaning, they're from the second house themes is really coming into your own sense of value. And you can confirm this or not, but for me, it's coming into my own sense of value and security within myself, learning about myself, like you said, learning about myself, and come healing my wounds so that I can live and be secure in myself without any external validation of who I am.
yeah, totally. And it's been a 20-year journey really for me, um, to this point even.
Yeah, never stops.
Mm,
Layers and layers, right?
that's right.
Yeah. Um, so we'll go, we'll talk about it here and we can maybe add a little bit, but really it's basically your Neptune is right on your Chiron. at this time. So there's a lot of Neptune things that are happening, which are subtle changes are happening. Changes are happening in your life that are bringing you toward more and more healing. Um, it's basically your changes are happening within your relationships, and they're subtle. I remember reading that somebody might have ill health during this time. Um, you are your Chiron is conjunct your Neptune, which is can leave you feeling very sensitive, or opening a door to learning more about managing your emotions. Um, your moon is your Chiron is conjuncts your moon, so you might have difficulties coming to terms with your past at this time. So you're just now coming into it. Your Saturn is conjuncts your Mars. You like to help people but need to learn boundaries. So you're having a lot of challenges, as you've said, with coming into this new way of healing and learning about yourself during this Neptune square. Is there anything else you want to add?
I would say the only thing I would add maybe is summarizing what you're saying, but it was like a rebirth, a renaissance, a reinvention of myself came out of this.
Okay, great. So I will go into your Saturn. This is the last major transit of this time, which is your Saturn opposition. It happens around age 45. There's an external challenge that pushes you somewhere. Here, your North Node is right on your midheaven. So it might be a starting of something external to your life, or moving toward that direction. Maybe an external event happened that pushed you into, like you said, a new renaissance of yourself. And it is also very interestingly transiting Venus is right here, and right over Uranus. Of course, the South Node is right on your Venus. So that was the biggest thing that I noticed during this time. Saturn is square your Pluto, so you might have, and it's right now it's really close to Jupiter. So you were having at the time what we're having now, which is you want to grow, but you have some things that are holding you back because you need to deal with them before you're moving on completely. Saturn square your Pluto, which means you will have to work extra hard under challenging conditions just to get by. And Saturn is quincunx your Sun. This time period is characterized by feelings of restriction, blocked energy, or delay. So great patience is required at this time.
So wow. So the life lesson was, my husband eventually died, and I was on my own to survive, and that wasn't the plan. So on many levels, like, we were going to grow old together. That was the deal, right? Now I didn't have that anymore. And then my children and how to be their mother, father slash, and then finances and how to, so I think that that's really what came out of that, that, and I think that I didn't know that there was this need to learn, this, this reckoning with myself. So, but the lesson was being delivered to me.
Yeah. Did you did you work prior to your husband dying, or you did? Okay.
Um, 2 years before he died, I became self-employed. So it gave me the freedom to work sort of from home and manage things better. But I continued to work.
Okay. Did you go into a new career after he died, or was it the same one?
Yeah. No, it was the same career, but I went from being sort of, management operations, climbing the ladder of corporate success to sales and networking and building relationships to generate business.
Okay. And would you say that transition brought you into a new level of career strength?
Yeah, I do. I think that um, I knew that was one of those sort of, I knew inside of me the powers that I had to generate relationships and to be known in the world as a leader in a, and an opportunity for growth, and it happened.
Yeah.
The
I can
result.
I can imagine that the stability of working for a company, because I've done it myself, and then having to rely on your own business yourself, it grows you in a way. It helps you become more confident in your ability to survive and to generate income without that. I had a really hard time understanding that when I first went to work for myself. I was a little scared, to be honest, to rely on myself. But it really does help build your confidence over time. Would you agree?
I was, things were changing so fast at that point. I wasn't conscious of it. It's what I had to do. I was terminated from my employment, and the options were limited, but this was an amazing opportunity
Yeah.
um, to seize. And um, and so also it gave me the ability to realize that I could be known in the world for being an expert.
Yeah. Okay. I can imagine. I'm so glad that I actually learned about these transits now that I was on the other side of my midlife transition, but it really helped me understand that time, this time period that we went through. So when you describe, well, I didn't really know what was going on and I didn't really know what was happening. I was just responding to events, is completely right. It's like your life events prepare you for whatever growth that you have. And looking at this from really digging in like you have over time, and this is just another layer of that, understanding yourself and really digging into the reasons why these things happen, give you a new appreciation for life events that maybe you haven't had before, gives you kind of a story that says, oh, okay, this is why I had to go through all of this hardship, because look at where it's brought me, right?
Exactly. It's like the hero's journey of my life.
Yes. And you've had a specifically challenging time at this point in your life with the passing of your husband. And I can see, like, just like with your natal chart, it's so busy. There's so many things and energies going on. And with that beautiful trine, I can see how you're successful in business and how you're showing up in your own independent, quirky way. And that's a strength of yours, but it probably took you a while to really understand that strength.
Right. The
Um,
power.
yeah, the power. And but it's interesting to see how many conversations that you had in your, or the energies in your chart, and how it kind of shows up in your life at this time. A lot of challenging transitions that were happening, which is kind of a reflection of your overall chart. You must go through very intense periods because your planets are all in one area. So when it happens, it's very intense, these transitions. Would you describe it that way?
Yeah, I would. I mean, that's a reflection of my life from day one, and having to be the new kid in school. You
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah.
my life through, the various career changes and things with family, and yeah. And I will say too that one thing, and this is in retrospect really that I'm learning now, but for some reason I was always able to surrender and allow the change to go with the flow.
That's awesome. That's great. That's a great ability. And that I now that you're saying that about your moving, I moved a lot too when I was younger. And that does, and your Neptune on your ascendant really speaks to that, your ability to adapt to your environment, to be who people expect you to be, but
Hmm.
not, and maybe that took you a while to really live into who you are, because you were always shape shifting for other people so that you could get along, right?
Well said.
Yeah, I had that. I don't have Neptune in on my ascendant, but I have a lot of other things. And I think we both have Moon in Pisces, and we both have some similarities, Libra rising, just really trying to fit in, but at the same time being very different, and, wanting to be yourself.
Yeah.
Um, very strongly. So, okay, so that was fun. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your experience with
Absolutely.
us. And I'm sorry for all of the issues that we had with the presentation, but it was really fun to learn more about your life. I think I learned more about you during this phone call than I have known about you before. So that was really a lot of fun. I'm just going to say a quick note to our audience that. You know, I'm going to be doing these interviews with a variety of people in a variety of areas of their life. Either they're going through their midlife transition, they're just past their midlife transition, or well past, like Lisa is, and she's still going through a lot of changes. But I hope this speaks to you, and you can see how great this journey can be, if you're just starting it, and how useful it is to look back and to frame it and to learn about this time for yourself. I also would love to interview more people. So if you want to reach out to me, I'll have a link at the bottom of this video. If you want to reach out to me and offer yourself for an interview, that would be great. I'm sure I'm going to learn to do this much better as time goes on. But thank you for listening, and thank you, Lisa, again. And I'm going to stop this. Thank you. I'm going to stop this recording, and then we're going to say goodbye. Okay.
Okay.